Get back to the page here.
Bring it to order with a mouthful of cookie.
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
We call the meeting to order. This is the December 30th Select Board meeting for 2024. And Jan will be here, but she's running a little bit late. Apparently there was something going on the highway and she couldn't get up here quickly. So we will begin without her and hopefully she'll join us soon. But in her absence, Greg, if you would lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance, with a mouthful of cookie.
With a mouthful of cookie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You really have to review that. I'm serious.
I welcome everybody, and this is the point in the meeting when we'll entertain public comments. If anybody has anything they want to talk about that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do it.
So I just want to,
Karen Gariak has her hand.
before she and anybody else jumps in, just remind you, this is like a deliberative session.
Yeah, this is.
So this part, yes, you can accept public comments.
I will accept public comments. I'll limit people to 3 minutes and try to move it along so we get to the
Okay.
agenda, but
So Karen has her.
Karen.
She's muted.
I don't know where she went.
Oh, there she is
there.
right there.
You, hello?
There. Hello, you're live.
Hi, sorry to bother you. We're fighting the town in regards to the DRB gave approval for Nong sign, which is in the town right of way. And we met with the judge today and Merrill Bent. And the judge asked Merrill if you guys wanted to continue going forward with it and go to court. That was one of the questions that was brought up. She wasn't 100% certain. I just, Adam and I wanted to bring you guys up to speed. We're not opposed to Nong's having a sign. We're opposed to where it is because when you're pulling out of our parking lot, it is a safety issue with the tree and the sign right there. It makes it very difficult. And there have been numerous close calls. I mean, they happen monthly.
Okay,
So we would like to go to mediation. We would like to mediate with DRB, Nongs, Rodriguez, whatever. We just want the sign placed someplace differently. We don't want to spend taxpayers' money with a lawyer. You know, we don't think that's serious of a situation. We just want the sign placed in an acceptable place. That's all.
okay, I understand what you're saying. Is this in litigation?
So it's I had filed 3 or 4 complaints with zoning administrator before they gave them the permit for the sign. And then we had to appeal it to DRB. We appealed it to DRB. We told them about 10 VSA 495D, the town's own zoning ordinances, which state that you can't have a sign in the town right of way, especially if it's a safety issue. I know that Jeff Williams was brought in. I went and met with him to understand how come he thought the sign was fine. He said that he checked the sign from pulling out of Hill Vale. He can understand how it would be a big issue pulling out of our parking lot. And that's what, so I had to reiterate with him that that was the issue, was pulling out of our parking lot, not Hill Vale. And he,
Okay, so you appealed this to the DRB. Did they hear it at this point?
oh,
They
the
did.
DRB heard it and they approved it based on Jeff
Okay.
Williams, the fact that it had been previously permitted for, and all of the points that they brought up are moot. Like,
Okay, there's a lot of moving pieces to this and we need to get both sides of the issue. Unfortunately, though, we don't have the specific authority to override a decision of the DRB, as I understand it. They have a legal process that they go through.
Which they went through.
Yeah.
And they confirmed or affirmed the zoning administrator's decision. So, Karen has appealed that decision to the environmental court, so now it's in court there.
And in that appeal, we haven't had a lot of these. The municipality represented by the select board could take a different opinion than the DRB, which is being called into question. But it's typical that we back up our board. In any litigious situation, we have appointed these people to do a job. They have the autonomy to do that job. And we kind of, we don't want to create this disparity within local government. However, we do talk, and I will speak with Peter and I'll speak with Tim and get the history on this just so we know what it is going in. But beyond that, we can't really talk about this here tonight. We have no authority.
That's fine. And will you talk to Mr. Williams too,
Oh, sure.
because he's fine with it pulling out of Hilldale and there's no issue
Yeah.
with snow plowing the sidewalks, which I totally understand, but that's not the issue. There's a major safety issue pulling out of our parking lot. And we want them to have a sign. It just needs to be put in a suitable place.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Karen.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Anyone else, other, what do we call it, public comments? I'm not seeing any, so we'll get to the agenda and approve the minutes of December 17th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of 12/17/24.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 4-0. And we'll move on to the item number 5, which is the fiscal year 2026 budget discussions. Want to thank Scott and other members of the staff for the work that they've done on this. I don't know if people have had time to review what he's done. And Scott, maybe I'll let you explain it since it's came from your office.
Sure. So, I mean, I think we were kind of stalemated after the last budget discussion. And I think everybody seemed to have consensus that you were uncomfortable with the percentage to increase taxes that need to be raised, but you were also uncomfortable with cutting any key services. And so we were looking at various ways to possibly change that. We went through a couple of them and they were not acceptable. So I looked at this unassigned funds balance, which you see in the memo is almost $600,000 in it. And I checked with our auditors and I checked with actually several of the other towns that have done this to apply it against the proposed budget. So in talking with Mike, he thought we were looking at FY24 as a current deficit of between 188,000 and 206,000. And that's subject to the auditors coming through and finding things and changing things if they recommend any changes. So that would leave us with an approximate balance of about just under 400,000. So I was proposing that we plug in 175,000 from the unassigned funds balance towards the FY26 general fund budget, reducing the amount to be raised by taxes to 6.29%, which is a little more acceptable. And then additionally, I would recommend that we establish a highway equipment reserve fund, which we've talked about, and then putting 50,000 towards that to start that if the voters approve it. So it would reduce the FY26 tax burden, establish a highway capital fund, and still leave us with some money for unforeseen emergencies that might crop up.
It's very creative and I like the idea. Where do we track the unassigned
So
funds?
I actually made a copy of it. It's in the auditor's report of several locations, but I'll get you a piece of it right now, just so you have.
Okay, thank you.
We talked about this at the last-
Yeah, I just,
pass it out. So it's listed in a couple different locations, but in this particular, it's in the change in net position in the governmental activities section. And you'll see on page 9, well, that's all you got is page 9, sorry. But you do have
It's on the page that we have.
you do have a record of it on your previous things. So, and you'll see I highlighted the unassigned fund balance there, which was an increase from the previous year. Yeah, I thought to show you how much that was, but I have it somewhere else anyways. Oh, yeah, on the financial highlights page, which is at the beginning of the financial audit, it says, as of the close of the current fiscal year, the unassigned fund balance of the general fund was $595,406, a change of $130,329 in comparison to the prior year. So it had increased naturally. And as you understand, the unassigned fund balance is basically a carryover balance from previous budgets.
Yeah,
It has not been assigned or spent.
many years ago, I asked the accountant or the auditors, what is an appropriate fund balance to carry forward? And they didn't really have a good, a real idea.
Every auditor has a
They
different,
have a different one, but the consensus seems to be about 5%. If you've got 5% in, that you carry forward as a fund balance, you can, it would be reasonable to apply. And we had several years where it looked like it was exceeding that amount, so we would roll the excess money back in as a income item. And I think if we do this, it would take us, it's unusual that we finish up with a deficit.
that's
But
right.
it happens.
I think it was a budget that was not entirely reasonable.
Yeah.
Was that out of COVID? Still, was that during COVID?
After
23,
COVID,
right?
Yes, so,
And is this invested right now?
yes, it's in our general fund balance, so.
Says the total fund equity, 674.
That's the general fund balance? And so
No, the general fund balance, I do not have a record of.
we're seeing that recently. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not on the list of funds that are,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a moving target.
yeah,
It's hard to
but
find.
Given that it's gonna bring the balance down to 175 or,
Well, that's assuming the deficit comes through.
right? I wouldn't want to dip it any more than that, but
But you know,
pretty reasonable approach.
Manchester is very lucky to have some substantial funds in the portfolio. And you know, if some unknown emergency came up or another Irene or something where we had to go and borrow funds, we could do it within our own capacity. You know, you've done that before with the CERC fund for trucks. We also had the property tax relief fund. And even the sewer and water, you can borrow things. You just need approval, but, and a way to pay it back. But, you know, we're in a good financial position with those, with the, overall portfolios.
I think, I know obviously we're sitting here in 2024, about to go into 2025, talking about the 2026 budget. But knowing that, you know, one of the biggest, and I know we're talking about potentially putting 50K into the reserve for highway. But, you know, one of the largest items this year, right, was the 270 for the dump truck.
Right.
Do we have, I know they're like we have the plan for the fire department to know what's next on their list, like what's going to come in 2027. So that, you know, if we just have an expectation that if healthcare costs continue to rise, like if there's only so many moving pieces, right? The healthcare costs and what is the next vehicle in our rotations for the biggest expenditures. If we know that, and it's not going to be, even greater than what we experienced this year, I think that might give us a little bit more solace in what we're doing this year. If it's significantly larger, like let's say, that $1.5 million truck was coming down the line. We might want to second guess that.
In 2026, we've got a service truck in the DPW.
And that's only about 100,000, right?
Got a,
That's the only, but
the Explorer is coming up in 26 for replacement. Yeah, that's $100,000 truck, and the Explorer is 65,000. Those are the only two that I'm seeing on the capital.
But I guess so the establishment of a fund is a way to smooth out this process over time. And if we're putting 50 in, it's not a one-time thing. We should be doing that on
correct.
an ongoing basis to
Mhm.
try to smooth it out so we don't
But-
have.
I didn't mean to interrupt. On the police cruiser, we've established a fund for that.
That's right.
So that'll be funded out of what we've accumulated.
It's in the budget, yeah.
Yeah, 65,000. So,
There's Jan.
so next year, when I say next year, 2026, I think we don't have a lot of unanticipated ones out there.
Okay.
Well, unanticipated we might have, but anticipated, we don't have a lot of anticipated.
I just want to make sure that there wasn't something just beyond the horizon.
Yeah.
That we would be,
Yeah.
kicking
We look out
ourselves.
there to 2028, we got a sidewalk machine at 120. Or 2027. Got a dump truck at 190, we got a fire engine at 450.
There you go.
We got another police car at 65,000. We got water and sewer truck. Of course, that's funded out of the water and sewer, but another 60,000. 2027, 2026 isn't too bad. 2027 is going to be a bigger.
But that's why we should be reserving the money
Yep.
annually. That
Yep.
it smooths it out. And if
Yeah. This approach that's been proposed will help to soften that 2027
Yes.
for sure.
impact. So,
Well, we also have, an opportunity when we make asset sales, for example, to increase our capital equipment reserve funds. And that's,
Exactly, yeah.
that would
I mean,
mitigate these kind of situations going forward.
this is just equipment that I'm looking at. I don't know what other big capital expenses are out there. There'll be a large capital expense on paving, but it'll be offset by a grant. It should be.
Deferred
successful.
maintenance on buildings.
Yeah, we got that.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
And I was just pulling up the fire department, because I think what the following year they anticipated was going to drop, right?
After,
They're operating,
Compared to this year, yeah.
yeah, but not their capital needs, so.
Oh, right.
I mean, that,
their sinking fund for capital is pretty much gobbled up by trucks.
yeah, it goes incrementally because of their payments.
Every time.
It's such a large,
Yeah.
it's such a large number. It's not something we're gonna nickel and dime at 50,000 a year knock off. It's really one of those bond or lease payments or.
How many years these,
Buying it.
before we had to do something, we got to do something with the ladder truck. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
hopefully we can refurbish it, but,
The ladder truck was put to good use over the holiday with a fire and a chimney fire endorsed it at the end. Manchester responded and the ladder truck was used.
Good.
Just so you know. But what we talked about, well, we briefly talked about a possibility of bond for doing some capital projects like the police station and maybe some of the vehicle expenses. Is our debt service at a point where that might be a possibility? Or
debt service came down a little bit in 26 in the proposed budget. I'm not sure what's coming off in the year after.
But our general debt service ratios are very low.
right. We're in good shape that way.
I mean, if we were in a pickle on something, that might be something we would propose to the voters.
Where this leaves us is the amount to be raised by taxes drops from 10
0.22.
From 10.22.
10.22 to 6.29, so gets it back down to that, close to that 6% range, which was the target we were considering. Oh, there it is, 10.2.
Mhm.
Welcome, Jan. I know you came in a little bit late, but I think you heard most of that discussion about using unassigned funds in the previous years, and it accumulated over time. And the best guideline that I could find was that if you stay roughly, and I think what they said was 4 or 5%. And I think we're not gonna be too far from that.
No, no, but like I said, each auditor has a different ratio. I mean, I got 6 different opinions from one.
It used to, there was a time, a long time ago, when it just rolled back in every year.
To the general
without-
fund.
Yeah, just, I mean, it got assigned back in during the budget where
Mm.
it would be 2 budgets after the year that it wouldn't be the next budget, it'd be the following. Well, we used to, I got to think about this because it gets really convoluted, but our fiscal year used to be January 1st to December 31st, but we didn't approve the budget for the year that we were in until March. So we were already a third of the way into a quarter of the way into the budget before we even approved it. And that was why we changed to a fiscal year.
One of the auditors, at one point, when I was in Wilmington, recommended that they go to the voters and ask them to establish a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
And you would just take that money and put it in there. But the voters turned it down because they just didn't like their tax money sitting in the fund.
Right. But if you come through with a surplus by being frugal and responsible, you're going to have a fund balance, which is a good thing.
It is when something
Yes, I mean,
comes up that
you
you're
could-
unexpected.
I suppose a taxpayer could say, well, you didn't plan properly because now you're taking my money, but you're not using it. But it's a pretty small number generally.
Compared to the overall.
And then some years you're going to get hit by things that you did not anticipate. 8% inflation that nobody saw coming, that sort of thing, where that you have to dip into that fund balance. So
You can call it an unassigned fund balance, or you can call it a rainy day fund. It's the same thing.
Sure.
They may
except
have
that we
voted it down.
don't pull it
You don't
out.
put it out, yeah. You
and
don't
put it in a
as
separate fund.
in,
Yeah,
Right.
but right.
But it's being used for the.
A lot of the funds that we track are contained in the general fund. I mean, that's,
We've been trying to pull them out so we can identify them,
Yeah.
not clearly understand it.
Yeah, I think it's better, the more that we can
yeah,
have transparency to where actual
I think,
balances are. And also, by the way, making sure that when we allocate money from a certain fund, that we actually take it from
Take
that
it
fund.
out, Which we are doing now,
Yeah,
yes.
That,
Yeah.
that part gets
We've established.
a little
that, I
bit
think.
confusing
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
Yeah, absolutely.
that was a good catch and it was,
Yes.
And
I think it's being done correctly now. With this unassigned funds, fund balance, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it exists in the general fund because we didn't spend everything that we collected. And it carries forward. I think we just track it. If it grows to a large number, we might want to roll some of it back in to keep to stabilize taxes, especially in a year where they bumped up by quite a bit. It won't be available unless we're really lucky this year and come through with a surplus. There may not be enough of a balance left to utilize it in the out years, but it's money that taxpayers paid to operate the town, and it's there. And in order to be responsible to the taxpayers, we probably should apply it
Yeah.
in this
Well,
instance.
And then the difference to me in doing this versus taking it from the local option tax funds is that this is something that has kind of accumulated over time that we didn't allocate and spend versus specifically targeting a fund and drawing it down when we should really be letting that accumulate
Right.
until there is a real need for it.
Well, as you say, this is funds from exactly the right place, going to the right, allocated to the right cause.
And you get a better picture when we get a completed audit also about where we stand on these things. So I know some select boards have,
Scott, I gotta ask you, what happened with the conduit that went over the door and across the wall? Was that just poor craftsmanship or did that crash?
Sam strips and-
I think that's been like that
Has it
forever.
really?
Been there all
I
year,
just,
yeah.
I just happened to notice it. I think it's held up by that stick.
Yep.
Okay, never mind.
Never mind.
I did have, I didn't see it. Does this include the additional funds requested for the Manchester Business Association? For the
Person,
person?
no.
No, okay.
Nothing's changed since the last time we looked at this, other than that,
Line item.
the property tax relief fund. Remember, we had actually put
coming
100,000 there. We pulled that out. And that put us back up to the 10% number. And just for speculation purposes, I threw in, and you don't have it in front of me, but the proposed request from the appropriation increases. So the Manchester Community Library is requesting 335,000, up from 317,000.
And the Vermont Nursing Association.
And hospice went up from 10 to 20,000.
So those are all included in.
Yeah, and that didn't move the needle too much
They didn't move it a lot.
to be really.
I think it's important to say this again. We're responsible for the things for which we are responsible. Those are voted appropriations. The voters are responsible for those. If they want to add that in and raise their own taxes, that's their choice.
Sorry, I just want to clarify that because I see it in the comments, but the actual line item for the budget still shows 370.
That's right.
Because they haven't been approved yet.
Right, but he was just saying that was that for the purposes of the 5.6% you calculated those in, or?
I just did it on my own.
Oh.
Look at, you don't have that in front of you.
All right,
You factored in the increases.
so 37.
And
Yeah.
you're absolutely correct that if the voted appropriations were added, were plugged in at their existing values, well, I guess you'd take the 5,000 and the 2,000 out because that's already been established. Did you do that? Yeah, you did that to get to the 5.6%. But the reason that it dropped so much is because that makes the number for the budget much bigger. And so the increase becomes a smaller amount, even if nothing changes. So adding those back in, probably not a big difference. Yeah, you're probably right. How's everybody feel?
A lot better.
I like the proposal and I appreciate that you were thinking creatively there. Of all the times. I think this fits. And I think it's in keeping with your feelings about where money is coming from and how it's being allocated.
Well, and also in keeping with remembering the importance of supporting the services that we're supposed to be supporting. I mean, I feel like,
But I haven't circulated it yet, but I wrote the select board report for the year. I was going to circulate it today and I forgot to do it. But in the first paragraph, I talk about how the expectations and demands for municipal services continues to expand. In the 40 plus years that I've been on the board, we went from discussing highways and as kind of the big deal to all sorts of things way beyond the scope of what we were doing before. And not a small part of that is the role that the municipality is forced to play in natural disasters like flooding and that sort of thing.
Right.
We didn't have a lot of that. And now it seems to be a regular occurrence
Mhm.
every year and maybe sometimes a couple times a year. And the town is being asked to contribute to stabilizations in those areas. So that was something that we never really had to consider before, and it's a big one.
It is, and it's gonna be in the future also, unfortunately.
And I think we need to, at some point, it'll all be, we'll figure out what is the municipality's role in that whole process, what's the state's role, what's the federal government's role. But it's pretty clear at this point, there's always going to be a municipal
Share.
piece of that.
Yeah.
But we've leveraged, well.
Oh, no, we're doing
I
a
mean,
good
we-
job.
We've
Yeah.
leveraged to our contributions to take advantage of major federal and state.
State funding,
So
yeah.
that's-
I mean, you know, the upgrades and culverts and sizes and things that we can do, we're in good shape that way. Other areas that it's just natural geography is not gonna be changed overnight.
And we're protecting the grand list in certain situations, like flooding
Mhm.
in certain areas.
So we don't have to approve this tonight. Can't.
Yeah, we can do it next Tuesday night,
Yeah.
put it on the agenda.
Or we could do it tonight.
Well, I don't think I have it on there as,
Oh, okay, yeah, I was
I mean,
just,
as long as we have
Discuss.
discussed this, that we're okay.
I think we have a pretty strong consensus at this point that this is the direction we want to go, so we can put it on as an action
Okay, great.
for next week.
I know we're working diligently towards the town report and all the other deadlines that we have to meet.
If I send that select board report to you, will you make sure that it gets to the
Yeah,
appropriate
of course.
desk?
Let's throw it away. Just as an FYI, the first day to warn town meeting is the 23rd of January. And then the last day is the 2nd of February. So somewhere in that 10-day period, I will have you guys sign the warning. We get there.
I also, we met over 30 times.
Oh, my gosh.
In a normal year, we meet 24, 25 times. And my last report from the year before was, we met a lot of times because we were hiring a new town manager. We had a lot of meetings. We almost had as many meetings this
year.
2024, this year. It's,
Sounds like a pay raise to me.
Okay, done. Good.
well, we talked about it in your office. I said it should go back down to about that 24, 25 number. Then I started counting meeting minutes and going, huh.
We pay a lump sum figures.
We're supporting everybody but ourselves. That's fine.
We're doing pretty well. My highest paying job. Okay, so if we've got consensus, we can move on to other business. If there's other business here at the table. And if there's not, we need to go into executive session. We could go into executive session for negotiating or securing real estate purchase or lease options. Greg?
I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of negotiating or securing real estate purchase or lease options, the pre-disclosure, of which would might be, what is it?
Premature disclosure.
Premature disclosure, of which.
I'm sorry, there was a comment that popped up on there and I didn't see it in
Michael
time.
Noroff
Mike,
Yeah.
raises his hand.
Oh, Mike has his hand up, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, there's some last minute stuff that I hesitate to raise, but I think there's a possibility that if the board doesn't take action, you could end up forced to send some money back to Washington, which is probably your least favorite task. And that has to do with the bridge now under construction. The board voted to supply the last $50,000, I think the number was, I'm not sure of the amount, but it was clear that the motion said the last amount. And my question is, do you have the figures to back up the fact that in fact they need $50,000 to get to that amount. And if not, maybe you could amend the action you took at the last meeting, whose minutes you approved earlier, to include the amount set aside for the bridge as a payroll expense or however you choose to do it, so that you don't end up having to send money back to, or torn between not paying attention to what the earlier motion was and sending the money back to Washington.
That's,
So he's referring to the ARPA funds.
We committed the
So
50.
those are considered
that
obligated.
50,000 was already committed, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
That was under the obligated.
That wasn't the
funds.
51,000 that we were applying to lost revenue.
But,
That's correct.
but are you concerned with the fact that it was the last 50, like that being,
Yes,
Yep. Gotcha.
and
And
it
now I
was
understand,
committed,
but
but you
now-
could
now I
still
understand.
change your commitment at this point. Still
if
keep the
our-
50,000, have the entire amount available to pay if in fact it is the last 50, but have it to spend on something else if it wasn't.
I understand if our commitment to the bridge project, if they have enough funds so that we wind up being the last one in and it's less than 50,000,
then we'd have to send the balance
then we
back.
have to send that
Yeah.
portion
Right.
back.
I don't know without going back and look, but I don't believe the word last was included in the motion.
I
think
believe it was Heidi's motion.
There was some discussion about added funds, more than the 50,000. And at that point, you were saying, if we need to be the last piece and you guys raise enough there, then maybe we could do more. But you didn't commit to that. You didn't commit above the 50,000 level. So I'd have to go back and look at that. But regardless of the question and the way it was worded, the opera funds are obligated. So that money would not have to be sent back.
If we obligate money to a specific expenditure and the expenditure winds up being something less than what we allocated, what happens to that leftover chunk? Do we have to send that back?
Well, in theory, yes, yeah, because it's unobligated at that point.
I think the idea was that they had donors that wanted to see that the town was putting money in.
Mhm.
And so that we had to commit a certain amount, but we didn't want to be obligated to spend more than a certain amount at that period of time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that 50 is going to go to them no matter what. It was an incremental amount, but I guess if we just want to check the language on that, but to me, it wasn't,
Yeah, it wasn't qualified by saying the last.
or the 50 was the guarantee and
Yes,
that
right.
there could have
That's my
been,
understanding.
yeah.
Remembrance.
That's interesting. I'll have to look at the motion. Thank you, Mike, for bringing that up. I didn't think that a side comment that if we need to pony up more at the end of the day, we might do that. I didn't think that was part of the motion.
No, that was part of the discussion, but not the final motion.
But anyways,
There was something in there though. He's right.
I just went through all the minutes for the year. I should have that right at top of mind, but it's not, so.
All right, Greg, you were saying?
Yeah, Greg,
Direction to go into executive
did you get
session.
the motion down, even though I didn't accept the motion, but you got the language, right?
Yes.
Okay, Greg made the
Premature,
motion.
disclosure of which could be a distinct advantage to the town was the last part that I did.
Okay,
in there.
disadvantage.
Disadvantage.
Second to that.
Second.
Seconded by Jan. All in favor, say aye. Aye, okay, we are going into executive session. There may be action coming out, so let's, if you want to stick around, you can. I have no crystal ball to say how long this is going to take, but I don't think it'll take a tremendous amount of time. We don't have anybody going in with us, correct?
No,
Okay. Just, I like to reflect that in the.
Gordon might be available by phone if we need.
So should we just, we should.
We should probably
disclose?
mention that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That in the in the minutes.
I'll leave this here.
Recording stopped.
And then can we mute the line too, just?
That's right.
Recording in progress.
We can talk a little bit.
Okay, we're on air.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. I'll call the meeting back to order. We were in the executive session to discuss the potential sale of the Depot Street property that the town owns, the former town hall property. We've had several offers, but only one legitimate offer, which was a legal offer. Several ideas floated by us. And even amongst the ideas that were floated to us, the one offer that we have is the superior offer for the municipality in terms of what we receive. And for the town, I think, for the quality of ownership. And based on that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we enter into a contract with Equinox Mountain Partners LLC for the sale of 301, 321, and 341 Depot Street, Manchester Center, for the sum of $1,650,000. And we authorize the town manager to sign the contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0. And good job, everybody. We've been in this process for quite some time. Hopefully this will move forward at a reasonable pace. Scott, maybe you'd like to just reiterate what the process is that we have to go through.
Sure. So after I sign the contract tomorrow, we have to go through this notice of conveyance process where we have to publish it in 3 places and post it in 3 places and publish it in the newspaper. And then that starts the clock for the 30-day notice. During that time, a petition could be raised by opposing people opposing the sale. They need 5% of the voters and they would have to be verified by the town clerk's office. If they do go that route, that would stop the sale from being consummated. And then we would have a special meeting or we could hold it at town meeting. And per the terms of the contract, it wouldn't kill the deal. It would just delay the deal at that time.
Thank you. Is there, we already did other businesses. Is there any of this?
It's Jan's time.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Happy 2020.
Yeah.